What's up guys, and welcome back to another Pokemon GO video, and today I am going to talk about the top 5 changes, or 5 changes in general, that should be made to the game. These are sort of important changes, not changes like, oh, I want to see more, certain Pokemon in the area. The biggest 5 changes that should be made. Now, note this isn't new features, it's not saying like, oh, we want this, we want trading, we want Generation 2 Pokemon. These aren't new additions to the game, these are changes to already existing features and improvements to the game, basically. So that's what we're going to be going over today, and feel free to let me know what you would change about the game down below in the comment section. So first up, at number 5, we have customization. Now, it's in the game, that's great, it's cool they didn't just give us a default trainer. However, the customization is not great. There's like 2 or 3 colours to pick from when you initially pick. Obviously, yes, hairstyle is a bit better, you've got a good few hair colours and such, but the clothing wise, it's about 3 or 4 different colours, I think, and I'm not sure if you can change your actual clothes. I think you can, but still, it's not a huge, huge different, it's usually just like a jacket, short, for a guy at least, jacket, shorts, and then, some underleggings or whatever they would be called. So there's no there's no shorts, there's no jeans, there's nothing, it's one sort of, everyone looks the same is what I'm getting at here. So it'd be quite nice if we had some more customization options and build it up a bit. Once you choose your character initially, you can't do any changes to it. Why not be able to collect customizable items at Pokestops, as well as getting these 3 or 4 items. You also get, every now and again, you get an extra piece of clothing, so you can, you could change up and sort of, change your style up, and that would just be another reason to go and visit loads of Pokestops. So I feel like that'd be pretty cool. Then at number 4, we have the tutorial. The tutorial to the game, or the guide to the game, is almost non-existent. Professor Willow turns up, he says, yo, what's up? Welcome to the Water Pokemon. Happy starter? Cool. He mentions Pokestops, I believe, but unless you go actively to sort of follow the tutorial at the very start of the game, that's it. All I experienced when I was starting was that starter bit, and I think, I was then told to go and find a Pokestop. I didn't find a Pokestop at the time because I was just at home, and there's not really any nearby, so that was it. I didn't hear any more about it after that point. So I feel like, a better tutorial would be nice. I think if you click tips or whatever, you do get Professor Willow talking to you about certain things, but they're not explained. There's no sort of explanation of the game's sort of physics or whatever. First time I got a Pokemon egg, I wasn't told I had to put it in an incubator. I knew myself, of course, but new players that didn't know anything about Pokemon or the game itself, they'd get an egg and think, great, it's going to hatch. Nope, you got to put it in an incubator, and of course, just these little sort of, yes, you got a Pokemon egg, cool, you need to do this, this, and this to hatch it. Just to explain the game as people play and progress through it, rather than throwing all the information right at the start and just trying to stick there. So that's that. Then at number 3, we have the fact, obviously I'm not a very high level because I don't live in a very populated area, so there's not much to do in these games. But apparently when you get to a very high level, like level 20 or so, even Pokemon with lower CP, lower combat power, like Pidgeys and such, say they've only got a few hundred CP, which isn't really that amazing. Apparently, they still do take a good few Pokeballs to actually catch. It seems like when you initially start the game, yes, okay, you start there, Pokemon will generally be caught in one Pokeball. Then when you level up a bit, it might take 2 or 3, and then when you get to the point, with high CP, where you actually need to use raspberries and stuff like that, and use Great Balls and Ultra Balls. But it doesn't seem like, as you level up, the Pokemon with lower CP, say when you get to level 20, a Pokemon with about, 100 or so CP, it's not that useful to you, but it still might take 2 or 3 balls to catch it. And I've even heard people saying that it takes 6 balls to catch a Pidgey of about, 200 or 300 CP, which of course you don't need this Pidgey, but it would be nice to get for the candy. So what I'm saying here is basically, sort the scaling out here, Niantic, okay, you're level 20, the Pokemon CP you're getting now might be like 1,500. Anything less than 1,000 should have, the same sort of chance of catching it as you did originally. So sort of scale it as you go, I guess. I can't really explain how to do this, but sort out the scaling of how hard Pokemon are to catch with your level. So that's that. Then at number 2, we have basically gym battles. Now I'll apologise because neither of these video images are my gym battle images because I've never actually been to a gym. I've passed by one in the car. I've never been to the gym to challenge it, but obviously the gym sort of function, the battle function overall in this game is point and tap. Basically you just got to spam attacks as much as you can And that's that. There's no turn-based combat. Now, a lot of people are asking for turn-based combat, to sort of, keep the old Pokemon going here. You keep the old aspects from the games going. Now, whether this would be a good thing or a bad thing, it's unsure. I've put it on this list because not a lot of people are requesting it. I'm not sure it would be an amazing idea because, of course, to battle a gym, you have to actually physically stand there and battle your gym. If it's turn-based and you've got to, wait for the opponent to attack and you attack and the opponent attacks and then you attack, it could take a while. Everyone knows about those stally gym battles from, any Pokemon game almost, where you get stuck and you can't do much damage and neither can the opponent, just hitting and hitting and hitting. You could be stuck in the gym battle for ages and you might be standing by the gym for, 10, 15 minutes for no apparent reason, whereas currently, I'm sure no one, you don't really stand at a gym for more than 5 minutes, do a bit of training and then you leave. So I'm not sure if it would be a good change or not, but a lot of people are requesting it, so I thought it was worth a mention in this video. If you want to see turn-based combat in Pokemon Go, let me know down below what you think about that and how you would like to see it done. But then we shall move on to number 1. What's the biggest change that Niantic needs to make to these games, or this game? It is the Pokemon spawning algorithm. Okay, I'm going to give you a reason for this. So I'm sat at home, I don't live in a city, I don't live in a big town, I live in a small village. There's one Pokestop in my village, but that's cool, there's a couple of Pokemon dotted around my village as well, so if I wanted to I could walk to the Pokestop, get some Pokeballs, and then catch some Pokemon on my way home. So I'm sitting at home and I think, right, well, I fancy a walk, I'm going to take the dog for a walk, let's go down the road, go down the road, walk through the fields and such, maybe catch some Pokemon while we're there. I walk down the road and there's no Pokemon nearby. Niantic, for the data for Pokemon Go, it's all pulled from Ingress, Niantic's previous game, which is sort of different but similarly based in sort of real world stuff. They pulled the data from that and turned the portals in Ingress to Pokemon spots or Pokestops or gyms, and that's that. So if no one was playing Ingress anywhere near you, or if the other way it's also done apparently is by sort of cell phone usage. So if you live in a very small town or a small village like I do, where there's not a huge amount of people using phones and such, then you're not going to get many Pokemon. And of course, as I mentioned, down in the country, in sort of fields and such, there's nothing at all. Literally no Pokemon. Now think about the Pokemon franchise. Okay, when you're playing a Pokemon game, Pokemon don't spawn in cities and towns. They don't. Because there's no grass there. They always spawn on the routes, or they don't spawn, they appear on the routes, on the sea, on stuff like that. Whereas in Pokemon Go, it's pretty much the opposite way around. Now, I'm not saying change it so you don't find Pokemon in the cities anymore. No, of course not, because of course the second sort of big aspect of Pokemon Go are the Pokestops, because that's what you need to use to get items. And of course, that's a whole other bag of worms talking about how many Pokestops there are around me. But obviously, if you were to lower the Pokemon spawn rates in the cities, then of course you'd have loads of Pokestops, but no Pokemon to catch. So don't mess with that. What I'm saying is, if you look at, if Niantic looks at, look at a grid basically of every country, they can get an algorithm to do this. Look at a grid and say, right, how many Pokemon spawn, are spawning in this grid of, maybe a couple kilometers by a couple kilometers? Oh, there's like one Pokemon, or 2 or 3 Pokemon, or no Pokemon. They should, boost up. If the frequency of Pokemon appearing is low, boost it up to sort of an average. Obviously, cities might be a very high average, but that's cool. But have at least a base, so you always have a certain amount of Pokemon appearing in it. And obviously, to then match it up, they probably put them on the roads. Roads would be a good idea. I don't really want to see a Pokemon out in, it's obviously on the map. You can't see anything. It's just a road, and then you can see a Pokemon somewhere in the middle of a field over there. Now, fields aren't great because obviously you have to walk over people's land, and that's not brilliant. Whereas a road, yeah, you can walk down a road easily, unless of course it's a private road. But then again, most roads aren't. So they could easily just look at this grid, say, oh, there's not many Pokemon spawning here. I know, let's pop a few in, pop them on the road, and that's all good. Just to sort of make the game a bit more fun for, because obviously, yes, Pokemon Go is getting people out, getting people walking around, meeting other people. That's cool. That's a good aspect of it. But you also want people to go out and explore. You don't want them just to walk around a city and get stabbed, possibly. You want them to explore the countryside and just enjoy the sun, the weather, the world. And of course, not having Pokemon in the countryside isn't a brilliant way of doing that. So that, I think, is the number one change that needs to be made, and I would hope it will be done fairly soon, or as soon as possible, in one of the earlier, in one of the new updates a few weeks or a month or two from now, before they do any other big changes to the game. So those are just my thoughts though. What are the top 5 changes you think should be made to Pokemon Go, or at least the top 1 change? Do you agree with me? Do you think Pokemon should spawn in the countryside as well as in the middle of the cities? Let me know what you think about that. But for now, this is going to be it for today. I'll be seeing you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, my friends.